All right, Nationals MP Matt Canavan and former Resources Minister, he's been calling for the government to cut back on red and green tape, which is unnecessary as we go forward to try and ensure that our struggling economy bounces back from the pandemic. He's also weighed in on the NRL's stars flouting the social distancing rules, blasting the players and the governing body for not penalising them harshly enough. He joins me now from our Rockhampton studio. Matt Canavan, before we get to that, I want to ask you about this afternoon's press conference where Greg Hunt was speaking, and of course he also had Twiggy Forrest there. Twiggy Forrest rolled out the Victorian Chinese Consul General in a not so subtle way of saying that we should sort of lay off China at the moment because there are a lot at stake from a trade perspective. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, Peter, I wish I could say I was shocked. It was shocking, I think, shocking to all Australians to see that this press conference be hijacked effectively by another country. But unfortunately, it is a fact that too many of our business leaders in Australia are sometimes vague about whether we should have an independent foreign policy here in this country. And I say all these things recognising the great work that Twiggy Forrest does philanthropically in so many areas, and that was actually the subject of today's press conference. But I really think our mining industry, our business leaders have to have a look at themselves here. In fact, the very arguments they're making or seeming to make kind of prove the opposite point they're trying to make, because the principle here seems to be, or the proposition that seems to be being put by some in our mining industry, is that the economic cost of having an independent foreign policy is too great for our country. Well, there's the problem. That is a problem. And if we've got ourselves into that position, into that problem, we've got to reduce our reliance on, say, just one country like China, if that's the problem, because we cannot afford to put our country in a vulnerable position where we can't afford to have our own policy.
Senator Canavan, a lot is being spoken at the moment about the opportunities that may arise post-COVID-19, particularly around investment in this country, particularly around setting a new paradigm when it comes to the construction of infrastructure, dams and of course coal-fired power stations. But there is a big impediment to that, and that of course is red and green tape. What are you advocating to try and get that stimulus up and running?
Well, quite simply, Peter, we just can't continue to afford having these unnecessary delays on approving projects which could create jobs. We've been fortunate enough in my generation, my time in the labour force, not to have experienced a recession. Now, that's likely to change this year, but we've been fortunate enough to have that luxury. And while we've had that luxury, we've increasingly decided to drag our heels, to take inordinate amounts of times to assess and approve things. Just the last few weeks, we've seen the Productivity Commission come out with new figures and facts about how long it takes to get a resource project up and running to be approved in this country. So in the last 5 years, that time has blown out. It did take 700 days about 5 years ago. Now it takes over 1,000 days, 3 years, to get approval on average for a resource project in this country. Most resource projects, most mines are up and running within 3 years. So we're taking longer to assess and think about whether we should do something rather than just getting on with the job of doing it in any case. So that's what we've got to deal with, because we've got to get jobs going, got to put Australia back to work. And I think, like many things post this virus, we will understand what is real, what is important, and will do away with the trappings of a luxurious life that will be relics of an age that will quickly leave us behind.
Matt Canavan, as an elected representative of the Australian Parliament, you must be buoyed and pleased at the way Australia has really sort of Team Australia, if you like, has gone into bat and flattened the curve. But there have been some notable exceptions. There's been an LNP opposition police spokesman today who's had to fall on his sword for an incident up in Toowoomba. But we've seen those images of the football players, Latrell Mitchell and Josh Addo-Carr and others, who haven't toed the line. What are your thoughts on the way that they've shown just a blatant disregard for the social distancing protocols?
Yeah, look, it's very disappointing. And look, I know Trevor well. He's a good mate. He's fronted up and admitted a mistake. He's paid a price for that mistake, and he'll get on with not just the fine. He's lost his position as well as a shadow police minister. I'm a bit disappointed that the NRL hasn't really imposed a penalty on those making a breach here in that code. I'm a massive rugby league fan. I've really missed not having that on the weekend. It's a price. It's a small price, obviously, in the overall scheme of things, but it's something I miss, and I'd love to see the NRL come back. I feel great heartache for those that have invested so much in the game that have lost their jobs, particularly the non-players, the staff in the background that don't get the accolades, and they've been put out in the street through this crisis, and I'm sure they're itching to get back into a job and get everything going again. And the actions we've seen from some of the players and some of the highest named players in the league have put that at risk over the past week. And so I just ask that everybody's got to think about the other people right now. And that's been, I suppose, a good thing from this crisis is that most of us, most Australians, as is clear from the evidence as you've said, are thinking about others when they do things, thinking about others when they keep distance, thinking about others when they download the app and maybe give up a bit of privacy, but doing it to try and keep us all safe. And it'd be better if in the NRL, if players just think about the impact on others. And I wish the NRL probably sent a louder message here to the rest of the playing group that this should not be tolerated.
All right, before we go now, you're a former Resources Minister, former Minister for Northern Australia. You served under Malcolm Turnbull when he was Prime Minister. Have you had a chance to comb through the book? And what are your thoughts on Malcolm's sort of accusations? He's taken the long handle to just about everyone, hasn't he?
Look, no, I haven't had a chance to read it, Peter. I probably will at some point. I am interested in history, but it's look, yeah, I got a few other things on right now, and there's a lot of businesses and people to try and help at the moment, so that's a bit more of a priority. Look, I work constructively with Malcolm, and as a former Prime Minister, I do respect that office. I think it's unfortunate that, from what I've seen and read in the media, that the centrepiece of this book seems to be Malcolm's views on everybody else in the world, as you've said. And I think Malcolm's a pretty smart, intelligent person. It would have been perhaps a bit more suitable for a former Prime Minister to concentrate on Malcolm's view of the world and policy, not personal reflections on other people, which is all very gossipy and not particularly interesting, even if it does come from a former Prime Minister. So I think that's been unfortunate, a missed opportunity. But look, there's a lot more important things to focus on right now than that recent history.
All right, well, I'll send you the book. You can be my first cab off. Just can't.
Yeah, I have got it from a few other people, you might have seen.
I'm sure you have. Matt Canavan, great to have you on the show as usual.
Thanks, Peter. You have a good one, mate.